You know, there we go. Perfect. Welcome, Rotarians and guests, to the Rotary Club of York, where our mission is to improve life in the city of York by connecting our club's diverse community leaders through fellowship, action, and service. I am your president, Courtney Piccolo. As we begin today's meeting, I want to remind you that Monday was Veterans Day. We welcome each of our club members and guests who are veterans and thank them and their active military and thank them for their service. I ask all who are standing to please sit as past District Governor Ben Hoover and Major General Craig announces the Parade of Veterans accompanied by Chuck Long.
Welcome to the 2024 Parade of Rotary Club of York Veterans. 4 of the 7 branches of the armed forces are represented today. First, founded in 1775, the United States Army. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Founded in 1775, the United States Marine Corps. Yeah. No, it's a Navy. And we already had the Navy come in, but also founded in 1775, the United States Navy. Stand up. And founded in 1926 as the Army Air Corps, becoming the Army Air Force in 1941, and then in 1947, the United States Air Force.
Rotarians and guests. Yep, another round of applause. Thank you, Chuck. If you could please rise as the color guard from William Penn High School, JROTC, presents the colors of the United States of America, followed by the opening song and the Pledge of Allegiance by past President Aaron Jacobs and the invocation by past District Governor Dick Brown.
Post the colors. Present hard.
Rotarians, please join me in the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars the perilous fight. It's we watch so streaming, and the rockets red, the bombs bursting in the air, they prove through the night that our flag was still saved us and stars going back. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order on. Left face. Forward march. All right, and as you all know, we start off our meetings by reciting the four-way test. So if you would please join me, it'll be up here on the slide in just a minute. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. You may be seated. And now I invite, oh, did I mess it up? Wow. Come on up. We forgot to do the invocation. All right, everybody please rise one more time.
Sorry, President Courtney, I threw her a curve since I wasn't on the proper side of the podium. Sorry about that. Please join me in a moment of reflection and praise. As the harvest time of year is upon us, may we be thankful for your bounty. We thank you for the precious rains and rays of sunshine from the skies that have nurtured our crops. Sometimes too much, sometimes too little rain. We thank those among us who till the soil, plant the seeds and trees, seek new ways to maximize productivity, and teach new generations of farmers. As Rotarians, may we be mindful of those hundreds of millions of people, particularly children of God, for whom obtaining just the barest essentials of clean water and morsels of food is a daily burden. Let us share our bounty with acts of kindness through Rotary so that all of God's children may be healthy and have a chance to prosper. Thank you for this beautiful day and for caring Rotarians. Amen.
All right, and now I invite Judd Lando to the podium to introduce today's visitors.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to have the honor of introducing our guests for today's meeting. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing until President Courtney has welcomed you. Dominic Piccolo, guest of President Courtney. Danielle Harold, guest of Andy Harold. Bradley Jacobs, guest of Andy Harold. Shannon Druck, guest of past President Ann Druck. Avelina Ruby Stewart, guest of past President Ann Druck. The following are guests of the William Penn JROTC. Freddie Hernandez, John Abril, Lisbeth Grulan, Keila Vasquez, Marcolenjo Espinoza, Mark Weiss, and John Howard II. Philip Cloner, guest of Thomas Caltagirone. Ashutosh Ingole, guest of George Jean Klein. Vasharulai Desh Muku, guest of Jean Klein. And Courtney Beekler, guest of Richard Kunkel. President Courtney.
On behalf of our Rotary Club, I would like to extend a heartfelt welcome to all of our visitors today. It's always a pleasure to have a few new faces join us, whether you're here for the first time, or if you're returning, or if you're my husband who just got home from his 11-month deployment. Happy to have you here today. Rotary is all about connecting and serving and making a positive impact in our community and beyond. And we're excited to have you all here with us. Rotarians, please help me welcome all of our visitors. Now for some announcements. The Membership Engagement Committee will meet on Tuesday, November 19th at 4 p.m. The location is still to be determined. The Idea Committee will meet on Wednesday, November 20th at 10:30 a.m. here at the Country Club. And as a reminder, there is no meeting in the week of Thanksgiving. So November 27th, there is no meeting. And now I invite Josh George to the podium to introduce to you our newest members.
Oh, Paul, come on up. Thank you, President Courtney. Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. It's wonderful to be with you today. And as we celebrate our veterans today, it's also very nice to welcome some new members to our club. And I always enjoy this part, and I'm very fortunate to get to do it. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to 4 new members today. First, in the pinkish jacket is Carrie Ebling. Carrie is a graduate of Owatonna High School, which is in southern Minnesota. And she went on to earn associate's degrees in social science and liberal arts from Howard Community College, and then a Bachelor of Science degree in liberal arts from Excelsior University. She currently serves as the Director of Development and Special Events for Penmar Human Services. Her community service includes serving on the leadership team with Mentoring Movement. She's a past council member for Grace Lutheran Church, and she's a past board member for the Howard County Police Foundation. And she is already a Paul Harris Fellow, so she's got a good head start. Her hobbies include reading, golfing, and she also writes a blog. And she is a past Rotarian with the Columbia Patuxent Club in Maryland. And no surprise, she is proposed for membership by past President Jackie Summers. Ladies and gentlemen, Carrie Ebling. Next, we have Aziza Klein. If Aziza could just wave. Aziza earned certifications in cosmetology and healthcare, but actually is self-employed as a medical interpreter. So her job is to work with medical patients in situations where they need language translation and help them connect with doctors and folks in the medical care world. Her volunteer service includes helping out with the Advocacy and Awareness Committee with the York Literacy Institute. Her hobbies include traveling, crafting, reading, and sewing. And she is married to Rotarian Jean Klein. So they become, I think, Jackie and I were talking about this at the table, maybe our 4th married couple in the club. So if I'm missing some, forgive me, but I believe there's 4. So that's pretty cool too. They are the parents of 2 children, Odette, who is 18, and Aya, who is 17. And Aziza is proposed for membership by past President Rob Bowen. Aziza Klein, ladies and gentlemen. Next up is Paul Minnick. He's the only man in the group today. Perhaps you can pick him out easily. Paul is a graduate of York Suburban High School and went on to Millersville University, where he earned his Bachelor of Science degree in history. And then he went on to Dickinson Law School, where he earned his JD. He is a partner with Barley Snyder. And in full disclosure, Paul and I have worked together on many, many projects over the years. We know each other quite well. So when I saw that he listed his hobbies as none on his biographical form, I knew that that was a bunch of crap. So let me tell you one of Paul's big hobbies, and he'll admit this, but only reluctantly. He loves to win. And as a litigating attorney, is that a surprise, right? So winning is one of Paul's hobbies. The second one I'd like to share with you is that he is a big ping pong fanatic. And every year we play in a ping pong tournament together, and every year he beats me. I don't like to admit that freely, but I just did. And Paul has really beat me several times over the last couple of years. But this year at the tournament, he was beaten by a 14-year-old kid. I am. As part of his community service, Paul serves as a board member of WellSpan Health. And another interesting tidbit, he started at WellSpan when he was in high school as a janitor, and now he's on the board at WellSpan. So quite the rise from high school to now. Paul, excuse me, Paul is married to Donna. They are the parents of 2 kids, Mariah, who is 23, and Max, who is 20. And he is proposed for membership by past President Brian Tate. Paul Minnick, ladies and gentlemen. And last but certainly not least, Jamie Norpel. Jamie is a graduate of Dallastown High School. She went on to York College to earn her Bachelor of Arts in History and Education, then Penn State for a master's degree in American Studies, and then also at Penn State, a PhD in American Studies. She is the director for Logos Works Partners, and her community service includes serving as chair for the Project Penny Heaven, as a board member for the Farm and Natural Lands Trust, and as a board member for the PA Historical Society, and also a board member for York Young Thinkers. Very busy. Her hobbies include, she's a history buff. She writes a blog and is well connected to history and can tell you all about that. She loves mountain biking, trail running, and paddle boarding. She is married to Luke, and they are the parents of Otto, who is 1. Yeah, cool. And she is proposed for membership by past President Aaron Jacobs. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamie Norpel. Now, if I could have the new members return to their seats, I would like to call up Phil Woods and Jackie Summers, please, to the podium.
Actually, for Mike. We wanted to recognize Jackie. At this point, we just inducted 4 new members, which officially puts us over 300. 300 is not a number that we've hit since, well,
since I let everybody go when I was president during COVID. Yes, it's my bad.
During that time, no fault of Josh's. It was the circumstances we lived under. Jackie brought it to the membership committee and made it apparent that there was a need for a march to 300. There's so much service our club does in the community, and 300 was kind of that critical mass number that we wanted to focus on. So we wanted to give recognition to past President Jackie today for her initiation of that march to 300, and we've hit it, we've achieved it. And I'm going to give her a moment quick to say a couple words, but there's no better person. And I chaired the membership committee during her presidency, but there's no better person, in my opinion, to chair the membership recruitment committee now than Jackie. So with that said, thank you so much on behalf of our club, the community we serve. Thank you so much for getting us back to that 300 and looking forward to 330.
All yours.
I am shocked. This is quite a surprise. Thank you very much. Obviously, I cannot take the credit for this at all. Yes, it was a desire. We have been a very strong and vibrant club from our inception, really. And so when we suffered that loss during COVID, due to no fault of our president at the time, it was the circumstances, we still held on, that we didn't shut our doors. We found a way to meet virtually, if you recall. And while we unfortunately did lose some members during that time, we did slowly start to work our way back because it's such a healthy, vibrant, solid club with great relationships that are developed all the time and great committee work and great community work. So thank you so much. I'm very touched. This is really so special of you. But again, it's you guys who are out there encouraging people to get involved, as you saw today. That's the members getting other people in the community to consider becoming members of this great club. So thank you and keep up the good work. And yes, march to 330. Yes.
And now I invite Andy Harold to the podium to introduce our speaker for today.
Thank you, President Courtney. I am here to introduce today's speaker, but before I do so, I would just like to take a quick moment of personal privilege, if I might. Joining me today as a guest is former Rotarian Brad Jacobs. As many of you probably know, this past Monday, Dover Area High School unveiled its Veterans Memorial. Brad led the effort to bring this impressive memorial to Dover, working for over 6 years to design and secure funding for the memorial. Before I introduce Major General Craig, I would just like to ask Brad to stand for a quick round of applause. Great, thank you. Now I have the pleasure to introduce Major General Retired Wesley Craig. Major General Retired Craig served as the 51st Adjutant General of Pennsylvania from February 3rd, 2011 until January 20th, 2015. In his capacity as Adjutant General, Major General Craig commanded the Pennsylvania Army and Air National Guard and was responsible for Veterans Affairs throughout the Commonwealth. Major General Craig served in the United States Army for over 42 years, commanding soldiers at all echelons. From 1968 to 1970, Major General Craig served on active duty in the Army before transitioning his service to the Pennsylvania National Guard. Major General Craig commanded the 1st of the 104th Cavalry Squadron, as well as the 56th Mechanized Infantry Brigade, which was later selected to be the National Guard's 1st Stryker Brigade. Following his tour as a brigade commander, Major General Craig was assigned as both the Deputy Commanding General and later as Commanding General of the 28th Infantry Division. Major General Craig's federal decorations include the Army Distinguished Service Medal, the Legion of Merit, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Army Commendation Medal, the Army Achievement Medal, and the Army Reserve Components Overseas Training Ribbon. He is also highly decorated with state decorations. Major General Craig joins us today in his capacity as a representative of Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, an agency of the United States Department of Defense. Major General Craig has volunteered with ESGR for over 15 years and will speak to us today about current operations of the Pennsylvania National Guard and how ESGR supports both the warfighter and their employers. Please join me in welcoming Major General Retired Wesley Craig. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, President Courtney. And it certainly is a pleasure to be here with all you Rotarians. What a remarkable club you have here. I've heard right away it's one of the largest in the country, one of the largest in the world, and you are to be commended for that. So as Andy has told you, I spent 42 years in the Army, 2 years active duty, 40 years in the National Guard. And I also have the honor of actually retiring from the Army, not once, but twice. So after I was a division commander, I retired. And then 4 years later, I was called back to return to service by Governor Corbett as the Adjutant General. And in between, and since that point, I volunteered for the USO of Philadelphia, becoming the board chair. I was the state chair for Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve. I worked with the Armed Services Council of the Union League in Philadelphia. And whatever I can to support those currently serving and veterans, like we have many in this room. So it is indeed my pleasure, and I really do enjoy having the opportunity to talk to you today. So now the first thing there, I am not in that boat. I may be old, but I'm not old enough to be in that boat with General Washington. So the National Guard goes back in history and it's as old as the country itself. We were known as the militia back in those days, and 12 of 13 colonies organized a compulsory militia service. So if you were in the militia back in those days, you mustered maybe 4 times a year. That was 2 days, maybe each time, usually before and after spring planting and before and after fall harvest. And you gathered together with your fellow soldiers, maybe the platoon strength, maybe company if you're lucky. And for 2 days, you learned how to fire volleys and march together in some semblance of order. And that was about it. but it was mandatory service. And oh, by the way, you didn't get paid. And oh, by the way, you had to bring your own weapon, and they would provide the ammunition most of the time. And also your own uniform if you had something like a uniform. But it was this, and then here in Pennsylvania, when William Penn founded the colony, he said, I don't need a militia. We're Quakers. We're going to live in love and charity with our neighbors, including all the Native American Indians. And for the first 60 or 70 years, that worked out pretty good. However, by the 1730s and 40s, it became obviously that the biggest city in the colony was Philadelphia, very wealthy, and a great target for privateers to come up the Delaware River and just sack the city. And they had nobody, not a single British regular to repel any invasion like that. So none other than and then also the French were making problems with the Indians on the frontier. Actually, the frontier was York, Lancaster, along the Susquehanna. And so Benjamin Franklin decided, I'm going to fix this. And so he created a voluntary association of militia, hence known as associators. And so he said, we need to organize this. And he did a lot of pamphlets, this was speaking in Philadelphia. And then on the 7th of December, 1747, some 700 associators gathered together in the center of Philadelphia, organized themselves into companies and regiments, marched down High Street to the Royal Governor. And there they knocked on the door, said, hi, Mr. Royal Governor, we're your voluntary militia. And according to British law, you must commission our officers to be fully recognized. So the Royal Governor looked outside. There's 700 guys out there, all carrying guns. He doesn't have anybody on his side at all. So he says, I hope we don't have any politicians here. He said, well, your actions are not disapproved. Not disapproved. So that's a political out because he didn't approve them, but he didn't disapprove them either. So that's how and so he commissioned the officers, and the Pennsylvania Associators, then militia, was born. And it was this group of associators, which was rather well trained because they started drilling immediately. And this was 1747. So by 1775, it became very obvious that there was going to be trouble with the mother country. So they began to drill 4 or 5 times a day for about 6 months straight, up until 1775 in June, when George Washington came and actually did a formal review of them in the center of Philadelphia. But it was this group, which was well trained by the standards of the day, well uniformed, well equipped, and supported by a large lottery that Benjamin Franklin also organized. It was this group that basically carried the day for George Washington's audacious assault over Trenton, because when he got his army into Pennsylvania after being beat up by the British in New York and in New Jersey, he had maybe 3,000 effectives. So he put out a call for the Pennsylvania militia. And in a period of 2 weeks, his numbers grew from 3,000 to 8,000, which gave him enough strength to try to do this thing. So after the war, that's when this famous quote, hopefully you can read it, where the Congress asked Washington, how can we possibly defend this country? We're spread along the eastern seaboard, maybe 3 million people, widely scattered, don't have any money. And so what he said, by making it reputable to bear arms and disgraceful to decline to having share in the performance of military duties, by keeping up in peace, a well-disciplined, a well-regulated and disciplined militia will have the best way of keeping our country. The disciplined and well-regulated militia would be fine enough to take on, because they just beat the British, could take on almost anybody, or so they thought. And they also be a cost-effective solution to national defense. So that's what Washington asked for. What he got was a rather disorganized and loosely controlled and completely always underfunded militia, basically the responsibility of the states. The federal government had no way to mobilize or call these militiamen to active service. And that's the way it was for all the rest of the 1700s and all the 1800s. So even during the start of the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln had no way to reach out and tell these militia units to come on active duty. He had to ask for volunteers. Can you imagine that? And that's exactly what they did. And it wasn't standardization and federal funding began to flow until the Militia Acts of 1903 and 1916, which has grown into the highly professional and operational force that we have today in the Guard and the militia. It was the World War I saw the first mobilization of the entire National Guard. They performed extremely well. And at the end of the war, the German General Staff was asked, these American divisions that you saw, and they fought about 35 of them, said, who were the best? And they named, the German General Staff named 8 of them. And of those 8, 6 were the National Guard, including the 28th Division, which Sergeant Piccolo and I are both proud members. You can tell by the bloody bucket here, and also you too, sir, Mr. Jacobs. So, here we go. World War II saw another complete mobilization. This is the famous picture of the 28th Division parading in Paris. That was at the request of Charles de Gaulle. And I'll tell you, the 28th Division, the bloody bucket, did a lot more than just parade. They were in every major campaign in Northern Europe and close to 200 days in steady combat. The Saint-Lô breakout, the race across France, the bloody Battle of the Hürtgen Forest, the Battle of the Bulge, and finally the reduction of the Colmar Pocket. The 28th Division returned home, returned to 39 days of training, 1 weekend a month, 2 weekends, one weekend a month, two weeks in the summer, until the Korean War. They're mobilized again. 28th Division ended up in Germany, reinforcing the NATO army for a whole year. Of those 16,000 soldiers who went there, about 5,000 of them were levied as individuals and sent to reinforce the 8th Army in Korea. So they saw combat as well. And then after Korea, the Guard returned to peacetime, what we call strategic reserve. 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer, not much more than that. And really the thought back then was, we probably won't need the Guard or reserve until maybe the outbreak of World War III. And that was the thinking until this terrible day. So on 9/11, the Guard became immediately operational. So what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you what it means. If you were in the New York Guard, the New York National Guard, about 8,000 of you were mobilized that day and poured into Lower Manhattan as they tried to rescue the victims of the attacks on the World Trade Centers. If you were in the Maryland, Virginia, or DC National Guard, thousands of you were mobilized that day and basically took up security posts all around Washington, D.C., around all the parts of our government that populate the nation capital. And then finally, if you were a member of C Company 103rd Armor in sleepy little Friedens, Pennsylvania, you were mobilized that day too. Your town is right next to Somerset. And that's where Flight 93 crashed. And you spent a month on active duty, and your armory became a morgue for those victims who died that day. So for the Guard and Reserve then became really operational all over the world right after that. The 28th Division found themselves deployed to Bosnia-Herzegovina for a mission known as S-412, Stabilization Force 12, a peacekeeping mission. Then a security mission in Germany known as SECFOR, Security Force, throughout known as Task Force Keystone. Then followed up by a mission in Kosovo, very similar to what happened in Bosnia-Herzegovina. So in a period of the first year, 2002 into 2003, saw about 4,000 Pennsylvania Guardsmen mobilized very quickly. Little did we know that was just a portent of what was to come. So in 2003, General David Petraeus famously said, he was the commander of the 101st Airborne. He said, what happens after this? We've gone in, we've invaded Iraq, we've taken care of the government, we've captured Saddam Hussein. Now what happens? Well, everybody knows the country dissolved into a multifunctional civil war, and our troops were needed. So into Iraq came the 28th Infantry Division. In about 4 years, we deployed more than 7,000 soldiers into direct combat operations. First, it was 8 separate companies. Then it was a battalion task force who operated in Beji, which is the northern part of Iraq. Then it was our 2nd Brigade, which was spent a year in a lovely spot known as Ramadi in Al-Anbar province, the most violent part of Iraq. Those soldiers worked for the 2nd Marine Division. They had an attachment to them. They received reinforcements from the active duty Army, with a tank battalion and the Marine Corps with a Marine battalion. They had a huge force of about 5,000. Plus, they worked with 3,000 Iraqis in Iraqi Army Brigade as well. This was followed by the Stryker Brigade, of the 56th Stryker Brigade, and then our Combat Aviation Brigade deployed not once but twice. So in about 6 years, we deployed the entire 28th Division in part, battalion by brigade or whatever. And then, so some people came twice. And at the same time, you may remember Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans and devastated it in September of 2005. And it was the wild and woolly there. They lost all their power. They lost their government. The police force collapsed. And there was all kinds of things. That's when Geraldo Rivera was famously quoting, running around saying they're in the Superdome and there's gangs in there murdering everybody they could possibly get, which turned out to be just an exaggeration. Hard to believe that Geraldo would exaggerate. But so we sent an entire brigade, the 56th Brigade, once again, reported their armories on a 3 days notice. They deployed 1,500 miles for a 3-day motor march. If you can imagine, we got a lot of Army guys here. Wouldn't a 3-day motor march in an Army truck be a lot of fun? Yeah, a lot of fun. It's very hot. It's a long road. And their first missions, as you see down the bottom left, were initial security force where they helped what was left of the police department. Then they did some both air and ground rescue, bringing people out of buildings, out of flooded areas. And then finally, the major mission then became food distribution points. So for almost 5 weeks, they operated food distribution points. So the way that works, Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, brings in all these tractor trailer loads of food. They come from all over the country. And it's an amazing thing to watch when these come in. Then they set up in abandoned parking lots, schools, shopping centers, and the like. So we operated 20 of these all over lower Louisiana. And so if you rolled up, they worked 7 days a week at 12 hours a day. You rolled up in your car and said, I need some food. They put the good old meals ready to eat. Anybody had a meal ready to eat here? Okay, yeah, okay. Lovely. So you got to eat that until the food distribution normally returned to normal. So they made some tremendous friends there and really, really made really a huge difference. So while this was going on, both the Adjutant General, General Jessica Wright, and myself as division commander started receiving notes and letters and even editorials in our local paper from the people in Louisiana. So I'll read you part of one that gives you an idea of the impact that these soldiers made there. And it says, this went to the Johnsonburg Press, which is in Elk County, northeast of Pennsylvania. I said, to the people of Pennsylvania, thank you. I am a Louisiana woman living in Washington Parish. Our area was devastated by Hurricane Katrina. Trees were down everywhere. Power was out. Roads were blocked. Houses, garages, and cars were flattened. No one had electricity. What a mess. Finally, on day 3, we were able to get into town where we found a little bit of ice and water and some food that you call MREs. And there we were being taken care of by a group of airmen from New England. A week later, your troops from Pennsylvania arrived, and they've been there ever since. I cannot say enough good about this group of troops. Their list of good qualities is endless. They are professional, efficient, kind, and courteous. I felt I should do something for them because I remember how the USO took care of our boys in uniform during World War II with coffee and donuts. So I finally found a donut shop that was open, had bought several dozen, and arrived at the food distribution point just as they were getting ready for their day. So I hobbled over to them because I have some arthritis. He said, excuse me, I picked up some hot donuts for you boys. Thank you for what you're doing for all of us. Immediately, smiles broke out on their tired faces, followed by a chorus of, thank you, ma'am, military thing. And I quickly turned away so the men could not see the tears of gratitude in my eyes. After that, I made it a daily practice to bring them hot donuts and coffee. The men were always happy to see me. I think they nicknamed me the Donut Lady. I will tell you, your men are fine young men, all of them. They touched my heart. They touched my life. I will never forget them. I will always be grateful that our paths have crossed. To your families, thank you for sharing your brothers and sons and husbands with us in our days and weeks of need. They were a bright star in a very dark night. Sincerely, Margaret. P.S. You sure do grow a handsome crop of men in Pennsylvania. I never met Margaret. I certainly would have liked to meet her. She must have sounded like quite a rip. So they returned, and then the Army, as has been already said in my bio, picked the 56th Brigade to be the only Stryker brigade in the National Guard. This meant a $1 billion investment in this unit alone. That's a Stryker combat vehicle. There's 8 different variants of that. That's the newest one that has an infantry carrier, has a 30mm gun in that unmanned turret. And there's a huge amount of equipment came in, massive constructions on new armories, expansion of old armories, a lot of work and expansion and training opportunities and techniques and equipment at Fort Indian Town Gap. And then also 180 days of training on average. So rather than 39 days of training a year, now it became 180 days on average. Can you imagine the impact that had on families, the impact that had on employers, which is the reason that I'm here to talk about employers and employer support. So that was rewarded, of course, the way the Army does things. They said, you guys have done a great job. You're going to Iraq in 2008. So I went to Iraq and operated out of Baghdad, north of Baghdad, did a remarkably good job, and then came home. Since they've been home, they've also been tapped from multiple other events, training events, as Andrew can tell you and as Mr. Piccolo can tell you. Now, I'm an Army guy, but I have to bring in the air because Pennsylvania National Guard also includes air units. We have 3 wings. The one is the 111th Wing, which is outside of Pennsylvania. In these years, flew the A-10 Warthog, close attack airplane, very famous one. And they did a lot of work both in Iraq and Afghanistan with tremendously telling effects. They now have been transitioned and fly the RQ-9 Reaper. The 193rd Special Operations Wing is in Harrisburg. That's their airplane right there. In those years, they flew what was known as the Commando Solo Mission. So they would go out and they could broadcast out the back end of that plane. You see in the bottom left, radio, television signals, and anything like that. It could be surrender messages. It could be propaganda. It could be anything you wanted to put out. It could be used and was used in Katrina as a way to put, because all the TV stations were down, as a way to put out messages of where you can go to get help. And then also the 171st Air Refueling Wing, which is a super tanker wing of 16 tankers in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All these wings were busy all the time and have been ever really since Desert Storm. I'll mention just a bit here about the 2nd Brigade. They were the ones who were in Ramadi, Al-Anbar province. They were remarkably successful, killing or capturing more than 1,000 insurgents in their year on the ground, discovering and destroying hundreds of tons of weapons and caches that the insurgents were trying to hide. Their work started the famous Anbar Awakening, their work with the civilians, and the Anbar Awakenings being the tribes of the Anbar province decided to cast their lot with the Americans and reject people like ISIS and Taliban and people like that. And that's what started the famous surge led by General Petraeus in 2007. I'll make one, is this a pointer here? Okay. The bottom left-hand corner, I'll say very quickly, that gentleman in the center with no pants is Gunny Burkhart. He's a Marine Corps gunnery sergeant, and his explosive ordnance demolition was his job. He was defusing a roadside bomb in the middle of a convoy when he realized it was booby-trapped. So the young Marine working with him, he said, get out of this hole. Somebody's overwatching and can detonate us at any second. So he kicked their young Marine out. He was getting out when the insurgent hit the clicker, as they said, blew Burkhart out of the hole, up in the air about 10 feet, landed on his head, and over, knocked out and dizzy for a short period of time. The Army medics got to him, cut off the rest of his trousers, bandaged up his legs, stopped the bleeding. And they said, okay, Gunny, we're going to put you on a litter, get you to the medevac helicopter which just landed. He said, no, I know that guy who did that to me is probably watching and yucking it up. So I want to tell him that I'm okay. So I'm going to walk to the helicopter. He said, you really want to do it? He said, I can do it. So I got him up, and he's in that position there. And that's a famous picture done by that was the Omaha Herald took that picture. If you probably can't see it, but you notice he's got his one arm up like that. Well, he's using a famous one-fingered salute. Now, it's one of these 3 fingers. I'll let you imagine which one it is because I've got a mixed company here. And he also had a few expletives to say, which he faced in 4 corners and said with a very loud, I've got a mixed company here, duck you. But he didn't say duck. He said something that rhymed with duck. And with that, they put him on a helicopter. He is still alive today. He's got both legs. The good news was he survived. And that became the inspiration for the 2nd Brigade that you, the insurgents, will not win. We're going to win because of people like Gunny Burkhart. We also have a state partnership program, which the Guard runs as well. That's been put around ever since the fall of the Soviet Union in 1993. Our partnership is with the country of Lithuania. It's highly valued. So starting in 1993, we started doing training with their military, both active and reserve, and in our fire and rescue service and their police as well. It's been a tremendous partnership, and we started deploying Stryker units by air there. And just a little bit of one-upsmanship. Of course, they don't like the Soviets. The Soviets occupied the country after World War II for 50 years. In fact, I can safely say they hate the Soviets, and with good reason. So when these Strykers rolled in, they were the first friendly armored vehicles that had been in the country for 100 years. So they took these 4 Strykers on a parade through the center city of Vilnius. Each had an American flag on them, and they made sure to drive them right by the Russian embassy, just to say hi to the Russians, to tell the Russians they had friends that were on their side. Now, of course, we talked about COVID here and the impact it had on the Rotarians here. It also had an impact, obviously, throughout the entire state and world, country and world, for that matter. So the Pennsylvania Guardsmen were tapped for this. The middle picture is the Leah Corps Center at Temple University, my alma mater, and that's where they were set up a temporary hospital that fortunately never had to be used. They also set up testing stations. They also set up inoculation stations. They also formed what I called hit teams to go into nursing homes where the staff have been severely degraded by COVID and they needed more help. And where did the governor go for that? The National Guard. And then everybody remembers the George Floyd killing in Minnesota. Right after that, major riots broke out, especially in Philadelphia. And after 2 days of massive scale looting, our illustrious mayor in Philadelphia, and I can say that because I'm a Philadelphian, finally decided he needed help, brought in the National Guard, and it just stopped everything. We deployed more than 1,500 troops overnight. They were all around City Hall, which is what you see there, and in various other spots of the city, and everything just stopped. So kudos to those young men and women in the 56th Stryker Brigade. And then, of course, most people don't realize, but the National Guard, especially the Pennsylvania National Guard, has been sending troops down to D.C. for inaugurations for about the past 7, I think. And they usually do, it's a very benign thing, more like traffic control, medics for immediate medical help should somebody faint. But on January 6th, of course, the call came in, hey, we need somebody here right away. And who did they ask for? The biggest state with the biggest troops nearby is Pennsylvania. So they were down there for more than a month. And that's, I believe, the current Adjutant General, General John Pippy, is the one shaking hands with that's a state trooper from Pennsylvania there as well. They were there as well. So that's the story of the op-tempo of the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. It is obviously very busy. All of these deployments mean time away from the family, time away from the job. And that's what I want to just very briefly mention to anybody here who employs or thinks about employing a National Guardsman. So you say, well, okay, General, I got it. What's in this for me? I'm going to lose this employee to training, to operational deployments. Well, I will tell you what's in it for you. If you employ a member of the National Guard or Reserve, you get the absolute best possible employee you could possibly get. Now, how could I say that? Well, it's because of these reasons I show right here. They're all trained to be leaders, whether they're a PFC waiting to become corporal or a second lieutenant waiting to become first lieutenant, or a major general or a brigadier general waiting to become major general. We're all taught to be leaders. And who wouldn't want to have a leader in their employ? They're taught to be professional. They're taught to assume responsibility, to take responsibility. They don't say, that's not my job. They'll say, that's my responsibility. I will get it done. They understand diversity, because I will tell you, color doesn't mean anything in the military. I don't care if you're red, white, blue, black, green, or yellow. If you can do your job, my life could depend on you doing your job. So you're my friend, and I will work hand in glove with you and fight to protect your life, just like I would expect you to do for me. You're going to be in good physical condition. They're going to be resilient. They're going to be drug-free. So if you need someone who's drug-free, like a company that operates heavy equipment or deals with personal identification, many of a number of things, that's your kind of person you want. They have a can-do attitude. So they don't say, I don't know how to do it, or I don't know what to do. They say, yes, I can do it. I will figure out a way to get it done. They're calm under pressure. So no matter how tough it is in your company or your business or whatever it is, these young men and women are trained to live and survive in armed combat, which is a lot worse than goes on in the business world. They're first-class image, so you always have her haircut. They look good. They look professional. You don't have to worry about somebody coming in just looking very unprofessional. They're on time all the time. Andrew could tell you, he said, be here at 11:30. I got here at 11:15. Old habits die hard. So that you're on time all the time. Punctuality is important. And they have a global perspective. They have an idea of what's going on in the world and how it may apply to your business. Okay. So at this point, I'll just mention in closing, employer support of the Guard and Reserve works to build that very important trust and support between the military member and the civilian employer. It's absolutely vital. And we've been around since 1972. We have 3 lines of effort to do that. One is information briefings like this. Others include explanations of the USERRA law, Uniformed Services, Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. We have an awards program for employers to go above and beyond, which we're happy to do and give out awards. And then we have an ombudsman branch, which do impartial mediation. So what questions might you have? Be glad to talk to anybody about anything in my presentation. I'm shopping for questions. In the back. Yes, sir.
General, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. I didn't know much about the details of the Pennsylvania National Guard, but I'm glad you gave us a terrifically good story. My question is about the Veterans Administration and the execution of the needs for veterans. We hear a lot in the news, pros and cons about the Veterans Administrations. Do you have any? From my understanding, the Veterans Administration around here is pretty good, but maybe you might say a few words about that.
Okay, there's a veterans, when I was Adjutant General, I ran the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs for the governor. So we have a small veteran, just very small, and we operate 6 retirement homes for older age veterans scattered around the Commonwealth, and we oversee the state's programs for veterans. But your real question addresses really the federal VA. The experience I've had with the federal VA has been very positive. They have a great number of very professional people who are dedicated to improving the health and well-being of all veterans, especially in their hospitals. They've done a lot of outreach to clinics now, where you don't have to go to the Veterans Hospital. You go to a clinic. It is a big, huge bureaucracy. It had to deal with basically taking care of World War II veterans who were gentlemen and ladies in their 70s and 80s, 90s. And now the whole focus has switched with that generation passing to much younger people with things like missing legs and arms, a lot of that. And so it was a big sea change for the Veterans Administration. My personal experience has been very positive. So they're really trying their darndest. Are there knuckleheads in the VA? Yeah, unfortunately there are, but not many left at this point. So I feel very positive about that. I would not hesitate for anybody to recommend veterans care for anybody to go to the VA. Hopefully, eventually they'll get to the point where when you leave the active component or leave service, you'll be automatically enrolled in the VA. They're working toward that, but have been for the past 5 years. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for all you're doing for us and for the world. My question is when a military member is deployed, what are the responsibilities of the employer in terms of paid leave or not paid leave?
Okay.
Supporting the family while they're deployed.
The law requires only that the employer grant military leave, which is unpaid, and that you then must reemploy that service member when they come back. at the same or higher salary at the same or similar job. If they've been gone for a year, you've obviously replaced that person. So that person, when the soldier comes back, they get back to in their same job or a similar job, same or similar pay or higher. But that's what the law says. As far as taking care of working with their families, that's where the awards come in. We have a lot of employers that do that. It is not required, but if you can start a family support group of deployed veterans or deployed family members, that's great. And that's where most of our awards go to firms that do that. I very much encourage that because it gives that family member somebody to lean on. So thank you. Thank you for that question. Other questions? If not, I thank you very much.
Major General Craig, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today. Your dedication to our service members and your leadership is inspiring. Your insights into the current operations of the PA Guard and the crucial role ESGR plays have given us a greater understanding of how we can support those who serve. So thank you for sharing your expertise and for your continued service to our community and nation. Thank you. As you all know, instead of giving the speakers a gift, we purchase a book and we ask them to sign the bookplate and we donate it locally. This week's book will be donated to York Day Early Learning Center in York City, along with a bookmark made by the students at Creative York. Next week, we will be hearing from Rotarian Victoria Diamond, president of WellSpan York Hospital. Vicki has been instrumental in the planning and development of WellSpan York Hospital's new $427 million expansion. The WellSpan York Hospital Surgical and Critical Care Tower will create over 500 new jobs right here in York and will hold over 640 beds for new and existing patients. This presentation will provide a more detail on the project, including the timeline and the additional insightful details. In closing, members and guests, if you would please stand for the retiring of the colors. Open the door. No, maybe the back door? Open all doors. No, okay. We'll give it another 30 seconds. Heather, you see anything on that end? No, okay. All right, this meeting is now adjourned. I'll see you next week.